real quick, just a quick intro for those of you that don't know me, as I put this up on my website and then up on my YouTube channel. I'm Michael Orwig, and this is the Wizard's Chest. And with me today is my special guest, Gene Decode. For those of you that don't know Gene, Gene is former military, 20 years in the submarine, sensei in martial arts. You've been at that for about 40 years. Is that correct, Gene?
Let me think. Started in October of '76, training with the head of the SAR school, which is the Navy SEAL school. He used to run the SAR school. So he was my first instructor. I trained with him starting in '76.
Yeah, it's about 40 years.
Yeah, so I got my first black belt and became a teacher under him in 1987 because he didn't play games. It was the real thing. You fought and got broken bones and dislocated joints. I mean, real hand-to-hand combat, real brutal. Then I started another style and got a black belt in that. And because once you got one and you got your basics, it's not so long-term. In 90, and then I got another style and a belt in that, black belt in that in 92. And then I got, I think, my first second degree in 2000 or something. And on since then, more styles, some don't really have degrees and belts, like, Tai Chi and Qigong, and Kung Fu is kind of a different structure. So I studied Shaolin Kung Fu with two different Shaolin instructors, of course, Qigong, Tai Chi, also Eskrima, Montes de Manos, it's known in the Philippines. Studied a lot of things, Kendo, just a lot of different things, because it kind of defines who I am as a martial artist. I call myself, at a point, it goes beyond self-defense and you get into becoming a spiritual warrior, like the movie by Nick Nolte. And so it becomes about, the true warrior is defeating your own self, so that you don't go into negative agenda of, all the mind control and all the garbage that the deep state has done to us. You learn to overcome that and be solid within yourself, not going into fear and all these other things they want you to go into that they feed off of, literally.
One of the favorite phrases that I've liked in my studies comes from the channeling by Daryl Anka. He channels Bashar. And Bashar refers to every form of modality, tool, artifact as a permission slip that we give ourselves to learn more about our own true self. And each one is perfect to each other. And I know martial arts are very much like that, especially when you're at it as long as you've been at it, for sure. Now, you also do remote viewing, Gene, correct?
Yeah, I was born with that as a gift from God. It's sometimes a questionable gift. I mean, you see whatever you see. It is what it is. It doesn't matter if you like it or not. When you're remote viewing at a soul level, I don't astral project or astral view, because that's influenced by emotion. And if you don't or do want to see certain things, you will see. And on the astral plane, there's all kinds of demonics and other beings that'll want you to see certain things and show you it so that you'll head in that direction. So I go to the soul level, and that's always been able to do it from the day I was born. And so it's saved my life quite a few times, where I've seen a car accident or something, sometimes seconds beforehand, and avoided it, or sometimes days before, or literally I've had to where I got my hand on the doorknob and suddenly I saw a huge accident on the freeway, and I waited till that was no longer in my timeline. And I got in the car and drove up in the mountains, and literally on the freeway, as I drove through where I'd seen it, now the car that got hit by the semi was a big, huge F-250, not my little Honda Civic. But I went through that area before any traffic started backing up, and glass and metal was still flying through the air as I kind of slowly weaved my way in and out of the cars that were out. Now stopped, but they had just slammed to a stop. So the glass and stuff was still flying through the air and bouncing off my car and my windshield. I'm like, thank you again. So I avoided that one. I've also seen things like, and just avoided them, like a wet mattress in the road that I saw if I'd hit it straight on in the pouring rain in Puerto Rico that the car would roll end over end. So I swerved and just hit it with the driver's side wheel, and it caused the car to spin out. And I used to driving on ice and snow. And so I just evened it up going backwards under the viaduct, and then my stop pulled over and my student got out and threw it off the highway. But, obviously if it stopped one side of the car, if I hit it head on, it would have stopped the whole car and I rolled end over end. So, it's allowed me to, and sometimes I see, to avoid getting dead, but sometimes I see things that seem absolutely impossible, like our first home we moved in and bought. And then initially all our neighbors were fantastic. And then the neighbor next door wanted to move elsewhere. So he sold his home, and the lady that bought it turned it into a crack house. And there was all these people coming and going. And my pooch was pup then. She came every morning when I'd let her out in the morning to do her business. She'd come back and she'd have a piece of a crack pipe or something in her mouth, pick it up because they chew on stuff. And I'm like, oh no, give me that. And so my wife told me, she goes, you got to talk to them. Which of the 60, it keeps new people. I can't talk to everybody. So we just put wording all around the house, and, it stopped immediately. But I viewed the house, and what I saw inside was, that can't be right, because I saw human fecal matter on the floor and holes in the wall with crack and cocaine and needles. And, so we went away for Memorial Day for the 3-day weekend. We came back, and there's people outside this house, proud new owners. Like, I didn't even know it was for sale when we left. There was these other people 3 days ago. I went and talked to them. I go, how'd you get the house so fast? 3 days ago, we had different.
Did you jump the timeline, Gene?
No, they said we picked it on an auction on the internet.
Ah.
And we got a really big deal. It's $40,000 under market cost. And I go, I think you probably will wind up paying that to fix it, and then some.
But
why?
They've never seen it ahead of time?
No, sight unseen. And I go, do you have the keys? And the oldest son is a big, huge, fire plug of a guy, 6'5" or 6" and muscles. And he goes, yeah, I'll go in and look. I go, yeah, I think it's pretty bad. I didn't think it could be as bad as what I saw. He came out and he almost threw up. He was green, and he had his hand over his mouth, and his eyes were wanting. It is, oh my gosh, a disaster. And so they actually had to tear the subfloor up because of gone through the carpets into the subfloor, replace almost all the walls, because it was an ongoing investigation. My other neighbors said, you should have seen it, Gene. Police cars as far as you could see down the street, and child protective services and juvenile authorities, and all kinds of stuff. So every time they're, tearing down the wall, there would be more stuff hidden in the wall. They'd have to call the police to come and fingerprint it ongoing. And it was a nightmare for them. But, what I viewed was true. I'm like, oh, it's what I viewed. All right. It was hard to believe, because they had a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old child living in there. I go, who would raise children in that? I can't believe I'm right. But I was right. It wasn't me. It's the visions God gives me. When I look, I always see the truth. And I've seen, lots of things coming for all my life, and all of them play out.
Now, we have, needless to say, a lot of stuff going on in our timeline.
Yeah.
We talked last time about the fact that technically there's an infinite number of timelines. We experience one, so we think of, there's only one timeline, but technically my timeline's different from yours and everyone else's, because you have your own individual bubble within the consensus reality that's playing out. And even within our society, there are many different timelines that are splintering off depending upon how awakened you are or not awakened. We got a big shift coming up with the different possibilities. We could have had Nicera Jacera activated. back on November 1st, which would have shut things down. Obviously, that hasn't occurred. Midterm elections technically are tomorrow. They could go through, they could be blocked. What have you been seeing, or what's your best sense of kind of which timeline, how's it going to go? And I realize there's a lot of different, it's really hard to say, oh, this is the definitive timeline that's going to occur. But what have you been seeing?
Well, I see overall that the narrative will play itself out, that people will wake up as a whole to what the truth of the jab was, for one thing, to what the truth is in Ukraine and the Maidan coup in 2014 and 15, and that this ongoing violation of the Helsinki Accords is nothing to do with Russia up until they decided to put an end, because they're signatories to that and nobody else was honoring it. That, they and the world will wake up to the fact that they wanted to do, and they stated they would in 2014, start ethnic cleansing. That they would go and get rid of people that spoke Russian and practice Russian culture. And it'll come out of the bio facilities, the labs, the mass graves that have been there and been added to since the Maidan coup 2014-15. And it'll come out, as per the documents I've shown from CIA back in the 50s, that it was planned from the 50s by the CIA and other groups to make Ukraine the money laundering, child trafficking, drug weapons hub of the world. Taiwan's a second one, that's for Asia.
But Ukraine being the head of the mainstay for the Khazarian mafia.
Precisely. It's where the name changers, as Cliff Hite calls them, settled down. And the czar at that time finally got to the end of his rope then, just like Putin did. And he said, no more capturing people on the road, stealing their children, sacrificing to your false god, Baal, Moloch, whatever you want to call it. Pick one of 3 Abrahamic religions and stop doing this stuff. And so they said they did, and then he saw nothing changed. They capture people, kill them if they could, take their names, go out to China, use their name, and do all kinds of terrible stuff. That's why I call them the name changers. And then the Tsar and the surrounding countries finally got together and they thought they wiped it out because they wouldn't stop. They just dispersed across the world and infiltrated, and again, changed names. We look at the Bush, the serfs, Hitler, the Schickelgrubers. They just changed names. Obama, Santoro, or Osama. The names go back and back and back. I got lists of who, what name, and this name and this name. They changed their identities and names, and just even their empires they changed. The Holy Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Church. It just disperses and spreads out, and all of the lies and the things, and goes on and on and on. So it's just, now I see they're waking up to this narrative. 30 years ago, I'd tell people, and they'd roll their eyes and put their hand in my face and go, you're a baloney, bro. Hey, mate, you're absolutely out of your mind. Because it's what Goebbels and, the propaganda minister for Hitler, explained. If you want to control people, you got to lie to them. Make the lie so massive, though, and control every input to their mind from cradle to grave. Rewrite history and make the lie of their past and their present and their everything coming so incredibly a massive lie that if they ever stumble on the truth, they can't possibly believe it. That's why Winston Churchill said most people stumble on the truth once or twice in their life, and they just continue to stumble the rest of their life because they've done such a good job of pulling the wool over our eyes. And I see that wool. We're starting to see holes in that fabric. The holes are coming through. And that was the purpose of the jab, was the alliance looked with Looking Glass and other things, and really adept remote viewers, and said, there's a series of scenarios you could wake the people up. Yeah, global nukes would work, but what is there left? You have 500 million people on a planet you can barely live on. They're going to do this thing. I mean, 8th century people were writing it down in China. There was going to be a global pandemic kind of situation. Seers have seen this, remote viewers have seen this for thousands of years. And so, okay, we let that play out and then let them play this card and they will see them for who they are. So now we see these fakey people, Dr. Fakey and all these other people, and it's becoming quite evident that the science that moving at the speed of science. I mean, they make things up as they go. Like Boone said, they change the rules as they go. It's broken science. It's obviously broken because
it was falsified in the whole bit. But the thing I do get fascinated with is technically the events of this last 2 years was actually the easiest scenario for the awakening. Elizabeth April channels the Galactic Federation. She's a great job, and she'll go in and talk to the individuals who happen to be Arcturian who run one of the timeline councils. And it's just fascinating when, if you think about it, when they're saying, well, we're watching this, and yes, we could have a solar flash, or as you said, we could have a nuclear thing, but these are the ripple effects. But this one, having a pandemic that technically never even existed, the real problem was, of course, the jab. I'll be good too, so that we don't get censored off of my YouTube planet. But the jab was always designed to be the real killer that they had hoped to bring out. But our wonderful star cousins have done a lot to mitigate the results. And certainly there's been a degree of collateral damage, but far, far less than what could have been. Certainly with the nuclear, I don't think Mother Earth would have allowed a nuclear event to occur within her own consciousness for what she's here to within her ascension. But it's fascinating how the events of this last couple of years actually was one of the least consequential ways for the awakening to occur. Along those lines, with the timeline, how would you see the events playing out with the current election and all that? What do you think would be the most gentle way for a transition into the higher frequency timelines to occur through this?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to change the neocon globalists are going to change their MO. They're going to attempt to do what they did in 2020. However, the alliances got on top of it. So they're going to capture the data, every single thing they do. They're monitoring everything. They're going to capture it all. And then it will be exposed. And then we'll have people who actually we voted for it after it's all exposed and recounted and redone. It may have to be completely redone, because they are not going to change the nature of who they are. It's like Garland Nixon said, a sociopathic narcissist who's out in the world saying this and doing all this terrible stuff. Do you really think they go home and they treat their kids and their wife different? No, they beat the kids and they, beat the wife. And sooner or later, those kids wake up to it. I know a lot of kids that grow up in it, at 16, the boys will get with a friend from school and they'll get an apartment and move out like I did. And then they'll, the wives will take the remaining kids and leave, because they don't change the nature of who they are. People don't change overall unless the pain gets so massive. You will do pretty much anything you can to make it stop. And that's why this scenario with the jab had to happen. It has to be to where people will make it stop, to where it's gotten obvious. People are dropping dead in stores and cars are crashing into trees and planes are falling out of the sky. And I mean, you're not going to be able to go Well, who are all these people that are dying? I mean, if it's heart attacks and it's up by 16,000%, why? Every single thing is up 16,000%. Why is everything up? Well, how come some people are fine? Well, they didn't get jabbed. This is going to dawn on people. They're going to be, oh no. So our cousins are galactic and out there off non-planet cousins. They've dealt with this before. They have the technologies to get rid of the hydras and the graphenes and all of this stuff. It's very easy. They could literally put a wave out that would wipe it out in a matter of minutes throughout the entire Earth. In a matter of minutes. They have the technology to clean all the environment in a matter of a day. I mean, they have the technologies are so far beyond in the space programs. I mean, you look at Star Trek, even the last ones, you're looking at stuff thousands of years behind what they're using in technology in the space program. Stargates they're using, they're way advanced from even that series. Sliding, they've been doing that from the 50s, going to parallels, going to other timelines. They're getting ready to do what they showed you. Every time they show you a movie, that's long-range preconditioning. It's telling you what they're already doing, like with Doctor Strange and Spider-Man. And they're saying, we're going to send the 101st Airborne. We have them there, and we're thinking we need to send them. That means they're there. They're 80,000. How do you cover 80,000 military U.S. deaths in Ukraine? Why do you think they're saying a cloud over Ukraine? Because what if parents want the bodies back? Where are you going to say 80,000 men and women in the U.S. military forces died? Where else could they have died at this point right now? That's a lot of men and women, young men and women in the armed forces. They're going to have to try to cover their tracks. That's why they're having, come on, Alinsky is an actor and a comedian. That's all he is. He has no expertise to do anything he's doing. He was at the peace tables in March, already going to go. And then Boris the clown comes down and says, absolutely not. And like he has the mind to do that either. I mean, you look at a president that can do almost an hour lecture and a 4-hour Q&A with answers that are like speech writers wrote them for days. Every single answer, no cue cards, no teleprompter. I mean, the rest of them, Macron, why do you think they all hate him? It's called jealousy. Confident and competent. Macron, Trudeau, Biden, I mean, he drops his notes. He can't last for 30 seconds. Obama would have been a train wreck without teleprompters. Yeah, he sounded all amazing and eloquent, but he has speechwriters and all of that going all the time. They got all these cue cards and all this other stuff. So it's becoming obvious to people what's going on, but you've got to cover the truth of what's really happening on the ground. People are waking up to the truth and they're seeing the truth. And they're seeing what the truth of the sanctions are. How come their economy is doing great? Why do you think think? Why do you think they don't want any Russians traveling? Because you talk to Russians coming to your country and go, wow, I don't even have a job. What's Russia like? I would love to go to see Moscow and see all those amazing things. But I don't have a job, or I'm living on my savings, or I work 1 day a week, or very part-time. Well, oh, really? That's sad now. It's not like that in Russia? No, we all, our economy is going amazing. Where do we buy stuff in your country? Food at hardly anything in the stores. We're not used to this. What do you mean you're not used to that? Our stores are stocked. Your fuel costs a fortune here. Your fuel doesn't cost them. That's why they don't want them traveling, because we're going to talk to them and go, and we're have conversations, go, oh, that's not how it is. You go to other countries and find out the truth, or you talk to people from other countries, the truth always comes out. It's the nature of how it is. So you can sit there and lie on the media and on the tube or whatever you want. But it's going to become obvious to people what's really going on when the real offense, like in Ukraine, when Russia launches a serious offensive. I mean, it's like they're running out of missiles. Really? Are they really? Day after day after day, pound, pound, pound. There's no, why does the US not have much reserves of diesel? Well, how are they having electrical power if their grid is pretty much pounded into non-existence? How are some of those lights here and there shining if it's all been destroyed? Diesel generators, but they don't have the means to produce that. Where's it coming from? Oh, let me think. Who's running out? We're running out, and they seem to be having lots of diesel to run generators, but they can't produce it. Let me connect the dots. It's just kind of common sense. And, people are going to wake up and start using their common sense. They're going to go, yeah.
Where are we with an update on the deep underground military bases under Ukraine? I know it's one of the largest complexes. It's enormous, and I know it's your main level of expertise. Any kind of update there? Where are they percentage-wise in cleaning and clearing all of that out, do you think?
I would say pretty close to 100% in Ukraine. Why do you know that? Again, connect the dots.
Yeah.
Because they withdraw, they doing their counteroffensives, being the Ukrainian military, they get hammered from the air. Well, if you're getting obliterated from the air, because even Ukrainian soldiers are being interviewed by CNN and things and saying they have total air superiority, the Russians have total air superiority. If you had tunnels, wouldn't you use them and not lose massive military? If you have Meglas, wouldn't you take all your tanks you're running out of and take them down there and move them where you need to move them and have them pop up over here where there's and make a new offensive and go hit and run, hit and disappear? If they have total air superiority, that means they can see everything you're doing if you're moving, because you got infrared and far infrared. They can see you moving. They can see you moving tanks and people and all of that stuff from space. I mean, even with technology beyond infrared and into neutrinos and all of that kind of stuff, stealth technology isn't going to even cut it. So
a lot of people, at least from my perspective, didn't have a problem seeing the invasion in Ukraine was about taking out those biolabs. But to try to talk to people and tell them, if they haven't awakened or whatever, that the level of dumbs underneath Ukraine was one of the worst anywhere, that it was, as you were saying, Grand Central Station for a lot of the trafficking. Still, people have a hard time. It's that, as you said, if you create the crime large enough, the mind just cannot wrap its head around the fact that it actually has occurred.
Yeah, it's like, I forget who said it, but we put away people for murder, or even serial killers where they kill 20, 30, 40, 50, or 100. But when you talk about somebody like Stalin, you're talking tens of millions. Or when the CPC came into being, and you're talking before they removed it in Guinness Book of World Records. In the first year, they killed 600 million. What?
The mind can't comprehend that kind of a thing. It just really just struggles with it.
Like you said, it becomes so huge, the mind can't comprehend. We talk about, through the Ukraine system, you're talking movement. But you talk about what's under South Africa, and if I go into the numbers, because you're talking 100 generations or more down there, people that no longer have eyes or pigmentation because the body's adapted to a no light situation or very low light, like all animals in cave systems do. So at this point, you're going, how many are down there? If it's 1/3 of the lower part of Africa, it's 1/3 of Africa, the whole lower part of Africa, all in this case, Nightmare Alley, like in Dulce's, the entire underneath of Libya. I mean, the whole country. How many are down there? If you have a spark cap grid down there that's the size of Uganda, underneath all of Uganda, it's 100 layers. how many are in there in cages that are 4 by 4 by 4?
Yeah, you can't even comprehend the numbers.
Yeah, if you start doing the math of that, the numbers go beyond. How can how can that be possible? The numbers are beyond our comprehension. So, to say that, they're going to bring them up and put them on Earth, where are you going to put them on Earth? Obviously, they can't be doing that. Obviously, if they're rescuing them and taking them, they're not on Earth. And
I
obviously,
heard that they were taking them off planet. Is that your understanding as well?
Not only can they obviously have to do that based on the numbers, but based on the situation. No skin pigmentation and no ice. How could they survive in daylight here? Even low light, it's still without any pigmentation in the skin. You can't. And a lot of them have been, in horrific conditions. And if you've been raised in that, you're 15 years old and you've never learned to talk or walk, you haven't used your legs in that manner. And we can't comprehend or wrap our head. And in the chimeras and all that research, and you've got mixed beings, because that's what they love to do. Go back to Atlantis and watch the old movies. And that's not a movie, that's real. That's really what they did. And they're doing it again. Same thing they did every single time they create these empires. They did it in Samaria. They did it in Egypt. Why do you think you see that stuff in there? That's not stylized artwork. That's for real artwork. Why do you see in the Valley of the Kings, the doorways are 60 feet high? That's not overbuilding, because a person that's 50 feet high can't go through a 8-foot door, an 8-by-4 door. You need that. So they've been hiding so many things, so many massive skeletons, and all the history has been rewritten and all of this stuff. And we think it's all fanciful. You go to Bangkok and you go to the palace there and you look at the paintings on the walls of the history of Thailand, and you're seeing mer people and flying people and green people and blue people. You're seeing the past. It's not stylized artwork. That is for real. And you're seeing all over the Middle East and all over India beings that don't look like us, that are partly lion, for example, or completely reptilian. And there's dragons in every place on Earth and pyramids in every place on Earth. Why are you seeing a worldwide system? Because you had a worldwide culture and you had those beings all over the Earth. And you're seeing representations of stargates, ancient ones, thousands of years old, thousands of years, and people talking about it. You just have to put it in context in the Bible. If you're talking a wheel within a wheel with cherubims and all of this, well, how would you describe a flying saucer if you're a shepherd in the year 0, and you don't know anything about electricity? You might not even know about the wheel. I mean, the basic mechanisms, the first basic inventions, you might not even know of a whole bunch of those.
You have to describe it only from your own point of view and your own languaging, which is very limited.
You're going to have to describe it in words that you have in your vocabulary if you see something. And, if it gets too outlandish, you won't even completely be able to see it.
Now, within everything going on, I want to kind of change tact a little bit, because we can obviously keep talking about the timelines and everything. But one of the things that we talked about that I have a lot of fun with is creating a different kind of school. In essence, a new school for the new children coming to the planet. And I always love the question when you talk to anybody of, if you were in charge, Gene, of the entire education system, you can build your school, you have unlimited funding, what would you create based off of what you know and the intuitive amazing capabilities of these kids that are coming in at the present moment in time. What's your school of the future maybe looking like?
Now, so how I think, and I've always had this, because of my remote viewing ability, of instantly seeing timelines open up in front of me. When I think of a thought, or I see something coming, or I need to avoid something, or, it's like when I was in high school and they were teaching us, wanted me to learn how to use a slide rule. Well, why?
We are dating ourselves when we start talking about a slide rule, Gene.
We date ourselves, don't we? I go, well, if you're ever going to want to do, your father's an electrical engineer, you want to do that? Doesn't he use that? I go, yeah, but I won't need to. Why not? Because I'll have a calculator in my hand and I just put in the equation and it'll map out the differential equation or the hyperbolic function or whatever I want to put in there. It'll make it even eventually up in the air as a 3D kind of light kind of thing, because they didn't have the word hologram, right? I could see it though. There you go. You're out of your mind. A calculator, at that time, the best a calculator do, add, subtract, multiply, and divide. And for that, you actually had to pull a lever, ching. So, it was like, that'll never happen because you can't get the necessary complexity. Even the computers are city blocks. I go, yeah, they used to be 16 city blocks. Now it's 2. These big, massive supercomputers. It's going to be to what you have in your hand is more powerful than what used to hover 16 city blocks of space. It's going to be that powerful. It's coming. I can see it coming. So we need to look at things and say, if we're going to teach the youth that are becoming here, first of all, where will their minds be? What type of people will they be? We already, if you research, there's already not only indigo children with triple helix and then crystal children where they don't have to have 11-month or 12-month gestation periods. They're doing it in 7. And now there's pentahelix children, 5-stranded, and they don't just have 4 genetic carriers. They got 8, 12, 16 of the 64 amino acids acting as carriers in the genetic stranding. So they have PNA. So what are these children going to be like? And what is the future like? So if we look, same with the calculator. And then I was saying with flat screen TVs and I, talking to a young man that was going through Yale. And I said, so you're going to be working in that? He goes, yeah. And I go, so I can't wait for something that's like a poster that I just roll out on my wall and it sticks to the wall and I got a wall-sized TV. He goes, that's impossible. I go, why? Same old thing. So, I'm looking at, let's get back to where the children need to go there. So first, let's stop doing math like a computer, digital. We're analog beings. We can do multiple functions at once. We don't have to do add or multiply, add in doing a multiplication problem. Use Vedic math. So teach Vedic math. So people, children, like when I went through calculus, by the time I got to linear equations and linear algebra, I could look at a matrix and give you the answer because the highest sutra is by mere observation. I got to where I could literally look in the sky and it would break into differential equations, quantum equations. I go, it's getting ready to snow tomorrow. I go, what? It's 85 degrees. I go, no, it's snowing 3 feet tomorrow. They're like, but that's not what the NOAA website says. Like, I really don't care. And sure enough, it would snow. They're like, how do you do that? Mere observation, because I learned through Vedic math. And so you teach, what are the systems, where the mind's going? This narrative you can see is falling apart. What does that mean? The truth is leaking out. What does that mean? It means we're going to get a fair world order, like you see already assembling with bricks. You already see money being backed by gold and things. What does that mean? It means all of these lies are falling. It's like Gandhi said, that there has always been terrorists and ruthless rulers and people that rule with impunity, and these terrible rulers, despots and tyrants. But in the end, they always fall. Think of it, always. So the lies always fall down, and it's coming this time like a cavalcade, like a cascade event. We can see the effect now spreading across the earth. That means it's all coming down. What does that mean? Then we're going to get to all of these technologies that have been hidden. We know they're out there. They were talking about hover cars in popular science in the 50s, and anti-gravity, and there were people researching. It's all going to come out. So we need to get back to the true science, not the broken science or the BS, the broken science, right? We need to get back to the true science and learn Vedic math and learn way Tesla. Go back to the basics. The way
that I just want to mention one thing about the Vedic math, because I have a degree in math from Duke, and I'd never even heard of it, type routine. And I taught math, algebra, primarily in high school. Vedic math comes from India. It's hundreds of years old. It's been written about, and I went looked it up, Gene, and it was offered in essence to the public school systems. And there's a couple of very good websites about it that talk about it and continue some of the teaching, but it's like a whole brain style of learning with the math. And it can be kind of frustrating when you look at the momentum of the education system. They don't change much. They give lip service to it, but they don't like to change. And Vedic math would be incredible. Another one you mentioned, I wanted you to play with a little bit, was the connecting to all things. And you love to do it through both martial arts and survival training. Talk about that for a little bit.
Now, so at the highest levels of martial arts, as you start heading in there, when a black belt just means you're starting to be able to learn from the art itself through the thousands of masters. You connect to them throughout time. And then you connect, the art's a living thing, literally. It's become a living thing. So I'm out practicing in nature. And the first time this happened was living in Puerto Rico, and I was on my veranda or patio or porch or whatever you want to, lanai, Hawaiian terms. And I have the rainforest on one side with koki singing, beautiful blue sky day, not a cloud in the sky. On the other side, this is near Loquillo, was the ocean. And I can hear the surf and see the waves. It's gorgeous in the Caribbean. And I was doing the long form Tai Chi. I'm doing cloud hands. And all of a sudden, my arms are being moved by the energy itself. I'm not doing it. I literally stop. My student goes, "What's wrong?" I go, "My arms are going by themselves. Something's moving my arms. The arm's moving. The energy's moving me." It's like what Bruce Lee said, "I don't punch. The punch punches me." Well, that's at the highest level. So then when I'm out running, you literally get like what they call running on the wind. And you start to run so light, so fast that there's a small area of energy over the surface area, about 2 inches, and you can actually speed skate on it, an area of energy that's like glass. And you can literally lean over and start like a speed skater, and you start going faster and faster. And one of my students actually, he speed skated past a car going 30 miles an hour, and he was going twice as fast as the car. Poosh back, and the guy driving the Jeep was almost hit a tree. He was like, "A guy just flew past me at twice my speed." It's like, we've been taught there's limits to what a human being can do. But an infinite God does not create a limited being. He creates an infinite being. That's why Christ said, "Everything I can do is but a mustard seed to what you can do." So we have the capacity. And so out in nature, I got to where, like, I see the beautiful waterfalls, and I'm thinking immediately, how do I climb up underneath that? I used to do that in Puerto Rico. I'd go up underneath a huge surging waterfall, and I'd be under there for 45 minutes, an hour. And then I'd pop my head up right in the middle of the waterfall at the top of the fall. So, and my students would be at the bottom waiting for their turn, and we do it one at a time. So, and regular people down there, you better call for a 911 or something. I think your teacher's dead. No, he's fine. What? He's been under there like half an hour. How can he be breathing? And you can put your arm around over your head, and it'll capture the air in the water that's falling. That's why it's white. It's not, just a solid stream. And then I pop my head out and look around at that. They go, "Okay, well, he seems to be okay, but he's totally crazy, but he's amazing." That's amazing. So in using the martial arts, you literally become one with nature, to where you get to where you can feel the trees, then you get to where you can actually talk to the trees, and then it gets to the next level. You can talk to the rocks. You could, because God's a living God. Everything's alive, and you realize that you get to feel it. You can feel the earth. You can feel her. You can talk to her. You can talk to everything. You can see the star talk at night, go high up in the mountains at 10, 13, 12,000 feet. The sky, 50, 150 miles away from any city lights at all, be way up above timberline, and you'd see the stars, and you could see them talking to each other, flashes of light. They're going across thousands of light years in a flash of an eye. You could see the trees doing the same thing, big ball of light gathering the tree. Once your third eye is open, it would fly to the tree next, and it would gather another ball of light and fly it back. And you start to open your eye, if thine eye be single, then you will fill with light. And like in Matthew, and so you realize then how you were created, and you get these natural abilities back. So through Tai Chi and Qigong, and even the hard styles, as I'm doing these over and over and over, you learn to set the calculating mind aside and unify your mind in entirety. Vedic math does it too, where you're both right-brained and left-brained simultaneously. And that's why things like teacups practice and spinning your arms in opposite directions, what are called brain gyms, where you unify the right and left in the corpus callosum, the bundle of nerves between the left and right hemisphere becomes larger. So you're not just in a right brain or a left brain or a male mind that's all in boxes, and a left brain, the other feminine mind that's everything's interconnected with emotions. You can use both simultaneously, so that you're a multifunctioning, multi-track person. And then you go beyond that to where you're literally going into, like what they say, 5D, 6D chess, where you're able to go beyond the matrix and literally go outside of that, and through hard style, I got that. My instructor, fought me often, sometimes so hard that I would, a lot of tiger claw and monkey, where I would have 30, 40% of my skin torn off. And, I was driving home, and maybe a broken bone or a dislocated joint. And the pain was so high, as I was driving home with my student and I are driving back. We were sharing an apartment at the time and doing construction and training all the time. And so I was driving, and my instructor would very nicely just spar one of us that hard, so the other one, in case he got incapacitated, could drive home. In the middle of driving, what Carlos Castaneda calls the internal dialogue, I was in so much pain it shut down. And suddenly, there was no car, there was no road, there were strings of light, with kind of like the Matrix, but in Vril, which is the first written language. It's literally the language when you're thinking in words, it's in Vril characters on the strings of light. And they weren't just one color. They're all these colors. I hadn't even seen some of them before. Greens and pinks and blues and violets and ultraviolets and infrareds. Oh my goodness. I'm like trying to figure out what's the steering. Thank goodness I have my both hands on the steering wheel. I know it's on there, but I mean, trying to figure out where I end and where the steering wheel begins and where's the road. I just told my student, I look at him, I'm like, oh, wow, what is that? He goes, what's wrong? I go, you kind of look like an upside down egg of light. He goes, can you grab the steering wheel, please, and pull us over and walk me around to the other side of the car to the passenger seat? He goes, why? I go, I can't see anything but light. Everything is light with this weird code flowing on it. And it literally breaks into the structure of how it truly is. And so when you see it, the level beyond the level of the mind we're given, back to the way a child learns, before it learns to speak, sees everything in just light, the light of the Holy Spirit just emanating everywhere. It's just like, wow, it's gorgeous. Well, it's gorgeous, but it's really confusing. So through those techniques and things, those are the kind of things that when a child's growing up and they start to learn to speak, let them learn, but don't tell them what they're seeing. So I did that, I had a fiance for 7.5 years, and her daughter, when we first got together, Because I was in the Navy, I didn't want to get married because everybody coming back from sea on a submarine, half the crew's getting divorced every time. Time you've been at sea 3 times, you covered everybody there just about that is married, has been divorced at least once. So I said, this isn't going to work. So, I was going to marry one that got out, and I changed so much because of my death experience and my martial arts and all that, to the point when I got out, she goes, I don't want to have anything to do with you when I propose. She goes, nope, we're not. I'm not going there. You're weird as heck. So I go, I thought that's why you're with me, because I'm different. Not that different. You're different than anything, anyone, anywhere. But her daughter, I never told her it is this way. I let her have an open mind, and she, very young age, could see things that most people no longer would see. So she'd tell me things, like, I see this, I see that. And I would see it through my martial arts training, but most people wouldn't see anything there. Like what you see a dog will see. They'll be playing and barking at something in the middle of the floor, and most people see nothing there. What's the dog barking at? Your dog's a little weird. No, your dog isn't speaking any language but dog, and that's not told what to not see. And there's a little person there, a Lilliputian is there, or a little sprite is there. And we've been told that's fictional. That doesn't exist. That's an imaginary friend, or that's not real. The imagination is the ability, if you go back to the Latin, to image. In other words, the ability to see through the third eye, the imaging through the third eye, and the mind itself. So, these are the kind of things that we need to, that's how I would teach children. Of course, Vedic math, true science, going back to Maxwell's equations, getting rid of all this infiltration and the garbage from Heaviside. Let's go back to the real things. And going back to Tesla's work and his teacher as well. When you get back to his instructor, and that's I'll let people research that by going to deep dives and looking at the time travel decode there, the plan to change the world through time travel. He actually said his teacher was so advanced that nothing he had should be told to anybody for 1,000 years to be locked in a safe. He actually had an entire different table of elements.
Who was his teacher? I would assume he was off planet.
Research that. I'm going to keep it hidden. I'll let people figure that one out.
Well, he was at least off planet, I would assume, because most
no, he was a living person, a polymath.
Really?
Comprehension. Yep. He actually took a tube he built himself, put an element in it, changed the frequency and the vibrational axis of orientation. In other words, the angular displacement of the wavefront. And it was just now a different element. Mm-hmm. You could take carbon and it would be gold. And he could change it again and it would be silicon. And he'd change it again, it would be hydrogen. And it's not transmuting it. The nature of elements is, think frequency and angular rotation. Everything is based on that. And his cosmology and cosmogony is incredible. You have to let go of everything you've ever been taught to even begin to understand him. And so it is, these are the kind of things that I would put in our school systems. And then
how did you find out about Tesla's teacher?
Research.
Okay.
I love research. And I researched Tesla, and he actually gave credit to another person. And so I started researching him. And then the Bless for Service coordinator that put together that Decode actually put it in there, asked if it should be in there. I go, absolutely. Absolutely. So, and then the piano, to teach children before they start talking, to sit down in front of a piano and just play away, just tinker around, and then slowly let them try to start figuring it out. And then you can help them a little bit, because that integrates right and left hemispheres again. And don't force a child to be right-handed, left-handed. Just observe them like I do my dog, or, are you right and left-handed, or are you front and back orientated in their case? Do they sit down by going down backwards or going down frontwards first? So you know how the dog functions, so you know how to work with your dog best. And the same thing with the child. How do you work with your child best? What are their talents? What are their gifts? What are they predominantly handed, or are they both handed? or the ambidextrous. So you know how to teach the child from the get-go.
Yeah, any kind of creative modality, I don't care what you choose, that has them present in the moment is going to be good for them to explore. And so
Yep.
much of the school system has obliterated all forms of creativity.
Yeah. Other things that are really basic that every child should learn growing up: acupuncture. At least the basic points like pericardium 6, so you don't have to have hiccups forever, and nausea, motion sickness, or the the blood control point for the body and the spleen channel, or Tai Yang, which is actually a acupuncture channel they don't even tell you about. So get back to true acupuncture, the 7 organ male and 7 female organs of 7 elements. And then, teach these basic points and teach basic acupuncture and basic survival, the rule of force. You can do 4 minutes without air, 4 days without water, 4 months without food, 4 years without companionship till you start losing your mind. So, and then if you hold your arm up at arm's length and put your finger against your bottom finger against the horizon, every 4 fingers up is 1 hour. Every finger is 15 minutes. And so these basic kind of things, how to make water palatable and drinkable and safe. If you can't get clean water, how can you make fire if you need to be warm and you're out and you're in a stalled car, or you're in a plane crash, or or you're in a home, or you need to make some fire in the fireplace, but you don't have any more matches and you don't have any more lighters with fluid in them. For example, how would you make fire using an orange? Yeah, you could use an orange to make a fire, or a piece of ice, or a mag light and some baling, some wire, or some steel wool, or so, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So basic survival techniques that gets people to think outside the box and give them different little, mind gyms that help to get the mind freed up and to see problem solving at a very high level. So, if I give you a card and a small birthday candle and an orange peel, make me a little candle stand that you can hang on the wall that'll support the little birthday candle and the candle's burning, and teach them these basic little things so their mind starts thinking outside the box. So you don't put their mind in a box in the first place.
One of the things I enjoyed reading about was Elon Musk's school that he had for his kids. And one of the things they developed, the computer guys, was a set of computer games that basically they had all kinds of paradoxes within it, but the kids were given the smallest amount of what to do. They had to figure out the rules of the game as they were playing the game. And the kids absolutely loved it because it was all problem solving, it was all teamwork, and everybody role played different roles constantly all the time. But it was an unlimited type of an adventure, and the game is still ongoing and still expanding that these guys have done. And it was part of the Ed Astra school. But it's just amazing when you say keep it unlimited, keep it vague, let them continue to expand into whatever the experience is, versus you telling them what they should see. It's huge.
Yeah, it's like, the earlier rendition of that would be in martial arts in the Eastern, just what are called zenkones. Like, what's the sound of one hand clapping? And so, because I went into that at a very early age, as soon as I learned to read, I was reading the inner and outer chapters and the Tao Te Ching and all of these different things. My mind opened up So like I went on my third submarine and they came up and they had this thing, what's the difference between a duck? And I immediately go, what kind of duck? Well, a duck's a duck. I go, precisely. There is no difference between a duck. A duck is the same. So again, if you have a unary operator, you have a unary response, thinking digital logic here, right? But then, I said, it depends on the duck. They go, what? Because my mind's not limited to 3D. And their mind was limited to that. They had a question that there are actually answers for. But the 3D limited mind goes, what do you mean? What's the difference between a duck? A duck is the same. How can, what? Well, it depends on the duck. What? It's like, I think it was it was Thoreau that said, what's the difference between a cow? Both legs are the same. All of this higher level of thinking beyond 3D. So it gets you to see, like if you you can draw a box on a piece of paper and you can see it's a box with a square and lines in between. But how does a hypercube look on a piece of paper? Looks like a swastika. It's actually what a swastika, going the other way though. Otherwise you're counterclockwise rotating. So what's the Sri Yantra? It's the structure of creation itself. So if you project that back into 3D, you got the 64 tetrahedral metric. What's a torus? A 4D sphere. So you're going, what? And that is actually a Platonic solid. How can it be a Platonic solid? What's the definition of a Platonic solid? All the surfaces have to be the same. Yeah, the surface is the same to itself in every direction from the center. And the center is unit distance. The surface is unit distance. So, and all the vertices are the same. 0 or 360 degrees in every direction. And that's a sphere. It's the 6th Platonic solid. The 7th is the hypersphere, or the torus, like a donut. A sphere rotating it in out of itself in 4 dimensions. And so it's, people go, I don't know how you see that. I can't see that. I go, very simple. Let go of your 3D mind and see into 4 dimensions. It's like when I went through physics and I had to quit for a while and think about it for a semester and come back at it. And then I got the next instructor and they started talking about dimensions again, like Nassim Haramein was saying the same thing. That's why like, wow, this guy's on, because he said, they talk about, well, this is a line and that's one dimensional and it doesn't exist. What do you mean it doesn't exist? I can see it right there. They go, well, it doesn't have any volume. Well, it has volume at 1 dimension. No, it doesn't. Like, you're not able to think 1 dimensional. Okay. Well, move back for us 2 dimensional. That doesn't exist.
Can't have volume with only 1 dimension.
Yeah. Then you make 2 dimensions of plane. That doesn't exist. What do you mean it doesn't exist? Some of my best friends are 2-dimensionals. You can see cats chasing them around the room at night. They go out the wall over here, come in through the ceiling over there, and they know it. They're somewhere there. It's like, you guys are blind. And then they go, we move it up and down, and it's 3 dimensions. That doesn't exist. I go, it either 1 and 2D existed, and I realized they do. So when I came back and tried to explain, of course I couldn't, but I said, or you have 3 dimensions, which are it's non-existence to the 3rd power. That's all you've done. You got 1 power, 2 power. You can't have it both ways, but they actually all do exist. And so then how do you make, how many directions are there? When I went to my first sweat lodge and the medicine man running it, when he go around the tent there, the teepee, how many ladles of water do you want on the rocks? I came to me and he go, 1 for each direction. And he goes, 4, 7. And he nodded and smiled because, they're in that level of awareness. And people are, after they put he goes, big or small. I go, full. All the way full, because I was trying to warm up. It was like 3 hours before I broke a sweat, So they're asking me, how can there be 7 dimensions? up, down, right, left, backwards, forwards, in. They go in, yeah, look within. What's within? God. That's where everything emanates from and goes back to. Comes out as light, goes back as a light wave going 64 times faster. Why? 64 tetrahedral metric. It's going back into that. So it's now gone out into all of creation through the 64 tetrahedral matrix with spheres around it. And now it's going back after it's got all the prayers and information and desires and wants. And, God will then act on that and send it back out again. And they're going, what? And so, they're saying gravity is instantaneous. And then they found out it's actually going 64 times the speed of light. So they're saying nothing goes faster than the speed of light. You haven't done your research. They've actually said now that gravity is 64 times the speed of light. So it's not limited by the speed of light. That's the outgoing wave. There's an ingoing wave, and nobody looks within. But the truth is within, not without. So you break down that matrix and all that self-talk, and you go within, and you find there is no out there. It was always in there in the first place, like in the movie What the Bleep. That's what they're realizing in quantum physics. When they first started doing the two-slit experiment, they said it's an electron or a photon, a particle, or a wave. I go, it's both. Well, it collapses when you focus on one moment, one decision, one way of being. It focuses and collapses the wave to the particle, because that's the universe you're existing. When it's a wave, that's all of the multiverses. They're like, what? I'm like, because I didn't get put in that box. Fortunately for me, I questioned authority from 2 years old. So I was like, I need to figure out what's true for myself. And I was pretty much almost raised myself. I was running around by myself and had very little friends growing up, because everybody goes, you're really weird. Even in high school, when I finally started having friends, they'd come into my room and I'd have model a yesteryear matchbox, and I'd have them all lined up or spread out in different links across the floor. And they go, what are you doing? You're playing with your cars? Because you're a teenager, right? They're like, yeah, that's embarrassing. I go, no, we're having a race. We? Yeah, me and my friends. What friends? Oh, little people. You don't see them. They're all dressed up in their finest 1930s clothes. They got top hats and canes and long dresses and hats. It's really gorgeous. They're like, okay. Okay. We just wonder if you want to go skiing there tomorrow. Yeah, sure. Pick me up at 5. They're like, that they didn't tell me, I don't see anything. They go, some of them go, I don't see anything. I go, why not? Because they're taught not to. Mm-hmm. And Arthur Conan Doyle actually in the outside of in the hills out in England had 2 young ladies that were actually able to capture pictures of them. And so everybody flooded the countrysides, and all the little people had to book out of there because they wanted to put them in jars. Why do you think you don't see them? Because you guys want to put them in jars. Who wants to be put in a jar? Nobody wants to be put in a jar. So the little people included. So they, same thing. I had family visiting, and they could hear what sounded like a helicopter over the top of the house. I go, you got a helicopter on top of your house? No, I don't have a helicopter on top of my house. What's the noise? I go, it's the little people. They've got a whole bunch of little tiny dragons, and they're getting ready to do an operation. And they're in hover mode like hummingbirds. They can make their wings go in figure 8, so it sounds like a helicopter. They go, what? What have you been smoking? I go, nothing. They go outside and look, and it's quiet. They come back in. Blah, 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 blah. How come I can't hear it outside? You'd think it'd be louder outside. I go, because they go into stealth when you go out there. Well, maybe we could capture them and put them in a jar. That's why you'll never see them ever. That'll be across the entire earth by tomorrow. I'll never let you see them. So it's, again, teaching the child also respect for all life and every being and everything that exists. We're taught the science, we're taught that there's things that aren't alive and that everything's there to be used, and that we have, dominion over the earth and over nature? No, we don't have dominion. We have
That whole aspect of the religion has always bugged the shit out of me, the way they do that. We have dominion. It is our right to dominate whatever we want instead of being connected and one with.
Yeah. You're a custodian given honorary custodial care of a garden. Your job is to, like the Native Americans understood it, that anything you should do, and the Aboriginals, the natives in Australia understood it, should not impact anything for 7 generations out. If you do that, it'll never impact anything. So everything you should do, you should never take all of the berries on a tree or fruits on a tree. There's always enough to go to seed and to provide for the animals. You should never hunt animals to extinction. They never, in Australia, have driven any plant animal into extinction. It's the Western mind and the science of the, essentially the two-dimensional thinking.
Well, within the hack of the matrix that the reptilians did, you go back to Darwinian theory and survival of the fittest, and all of that was a various forms of programming to have humanity basically say it's okay for me to dominate whatever I want to dominate.
Exactly. It goes back to Descartes, to thinking things are flat, X, Y, back and forth. And it's that whole mindset of dominion. And I control what goes here and what goes there. There's no up and down. There's no eternity at all. I'm here and then I'm gone, and that's it. There's even this time of year, it took water, distilled water in a sealed tube with sand that had been, completely, hit with all kinds of energy. So there was no, from Western science point of view, no living material, and made absolutely nothing but pure silicon sand. Put it in a sealed glass container and irradiated it with sound at 7 hertz for 48 hours. And at the end of the 48 hours, there were single-celled organisms in there in the water. And he, opened it up and analyzed the genetic structure, and they don't exist on Earth before. These are new living organisms, plants and animals. Where's the evolution there? You got new kinds of critters out of silicon and water and sound. Can you say the word of God?
Speaking of technology, and this will be kind of the last thing, we'll be running out of time here in a little bit, and we could keep talking for hours, Gene. I love speaking with you. Of the technologies that I've seen coming to the society, yes, when is society going to be ready for a particular technology? You have those at the front that have their minds open and those that are coming along, but you have free energy, you have the cleaning up of the planet and the world, you have the anti-gravity, which of course is kind of tied into the free energy, you have the medical technologies with the med beds, both the newer ones as well as the old models that are hundreds of years old, that can do amazing things. How do you see our movement into what I call the Star Trek level society, and how fast do you think it actually could go as these technologies are actually allowed to come out?
That's the limit of our mind. How we opened our mind. It's the only limit. So if you go to the advancement of the medbed beyond the bed structure, where you literally, like at the airport, you go and step 2 things go zip, zip around you, they're unzipping your DNA. They're actually unzipping your DNA and doing that to some degree. So let's do the opposite. Let's pull up the etheric and heal the DNA. So then beyond that, you go into a crystalline, near a crystal, and they vibrate, just like Lewis Team. We vibrate you with crystalline energy, a sound wave. And it pulls up your genetic blueprint from 1D and 2D, and you're back to whatever you want to set that to. So you can literally that's why they can heal the entire planet in 2 days. They can get all of the pollution, all of the jab stuff gone in 2 days, because sound, like Tesla said, if you want to understand the universe and the structure of the universe, think frequency. And they'll tell you sound doesn't exist in space because they're telling you space is a vacuum. No, it's not. It's full of water. And then people go, Gene, that's impossible. You don't have water in space. No, you have massive pressure in space. All the stars, gravitational waves pushing everywhere, the pressure so immense you can keep electron clouds in orbit. And that means you can have molecules. And the largest amount of water ever found, according to NASA, is in space. So NASA even told you. They even have it on the website. And so I showed that on, the nature. I'll be showing that I'll show that on another decode I'm going to do. I'll show it again just to make sure people got it. But it's out there. They've told you. And so people, again, when reading the Bible, are an understanding. What's the firmament? What's the waters above from the waters below? They found viruses and bacteria in space alive in the waters above. So the pressure in the waters up there are under high pressure and high heat, or at very low temperatures too, all simultaneously, because we are in the mind of thinking two can't exist at the same time. Oh, yes, they can. So the waters below here is kind of a very small temperature range. So you have to have some kind of energy field, because it's 3D, 4D, 5D. It's not going to be a physical structure. It's going to be an energy field. They broke the original one, so God just put up a Van Allen belt structure system along with a whole bunch of our cousins to help. And so now we have this energy structure that's keeping it separate. And then you go into flat Earth. Well, yeah, from a point of view, but what point of view is that? 1st century, 2nd century when it was written. But if you've ever been at sea, it's pretty darn obvious things are going over the horizon, because the Earth, is up and down, even looking on a road. It's not relatively flat. If you were saying it's being bent by the water in a hurricane, I've been in a hurricane and I've seen huge container ships over the horizon. That water cannot refract light. There's too much disturbance. And yet I'm just seeing the mass poking up above the horizon. But I could see them with my naked eye when the ship's not underwater, because I'm in a state 5 hurricane and ocean. We're going on a submarine. I'm strapped in on lookout, and we're going through waves 120 feet high. And I come up, I got fish in my hair, in my uniform, and seaweed all over. Oh, mass on the horizon at 120 degrees. So yeah, we called out the officer of the deck, get us to change course. It's not that far out, So it's really, really obvious. But you have to go back to the mind at that time again and go, how would they be thinking 2,000 years ago? And what do they mean by flat? If God creates on a blueprint, which he does, 5 proportion, and then we look at how we're created. Are you flat? I don't think so. You're kind of sort of 3-dimensional and kind of somewhat rounded. So to me, it would make sense. Everything's kind of like that, There's bumps and grooves and lumps but pretty much round. The bigger you get, the more round you get. To where you get to the Earth size, if you go from the top of Mount Everest at some 29,000 plus to the bottom of the Marianas Trench, 28,000 minus, about 57,000, but you take the entire size of the Earth and you shrink it down to the size of a ball bearing, the size of a golf ball, the Earth is much smoother and rounder, except for a little bit missing at the poles because the Earth's a toroid and hollow inside. So, outside the box for most people, I realize.
So what would you put out first? Anti-gravity, free energy? I would think free energy. If I were in control, I would release the free energy first, which seems to ripple affect a lot of the things I'd like to see. Now, as a pilot, you gotta let me have my anti-gravity vehicle. I mean, it just has to be my first thing, and it's got to be able to be flown with your consciousness, which of course is what many of our star cousins have. Their ships literally are tied into their DNA, and pretty amazing things from what I've seen. But yeah, as I've gotten older, of course, certainly I'd love to open up clinics with the med beds to help people within their healing. But I don't know, it'll just be interesting to see. Would you what kind of submarine would you have that was free energy, seeing as an old submariner like yourself?
I would go back to a Mercator vehicle. It's literally from the mind of itself, and I can steer it around in any environment I want to go to instantaneously, when and where I want to go to. So I'm not limited to going under the ocean or space or whatever. But, free energy on the basic one would be the first basic step, because that frees the mind too. So you're going to free the mind with free energy, and, because of thinking that way, you're literally going to go, okay, so how are you getting more energy from an area of space than you're putting into it in the first place? So once you get outside of the 2D, 3D thinking, and you realize that there are other dimensions and densities that most people have been told don't exist, then you're going to start to get into the other things. And then that'll free up your mind for all the other applications. And for the anti-gravity, you've got to have some massive power sources to develop the electromagnetic fields to cut through the gravitational forces.
That's where the free energy comes in to blend with those and everything, for sure.
Exactly.
Well, Gene, it has been an absolute pleasure. Let me throw up your website here. I'm going to hit share screen, and
I can actually, if you give me share screen, could share my screen and show it.
Yeah, let me see. So all participants who can share, all participants.
I already got it. You want me to share?
Go for it.
So genedecode.org, this is the front of the website. Got a little introductory trailer. It shows you a bunch of the different platforms on the deep dives, which you see here. You can either log in, subscribe to deep dives here, or you can just go down and subscribe here. And then you get into the deep dives area. Once you've gone in, if your thing says log out here, that means you're logged in. So I'm logged out because it says to log in. But this is a little introductory video we put together. It kind of shows you some of the content on the subscription site. Let me make sure I shared with sound before I do that. No, I didn't. Okay.
It was coming through, at least on my side.
Okay. Oh, no.
I'm not hearing it now, Gene.
Don't have sound. I should have let it go, huh?
Yeah, it was coming through, at least the first time.
Unshare and do it one more time. Let me try one more time to go backwards here. So let me go back to minimize. Let me go out. Let me come back in. And
I'm not picking up the video, Gene. There we go. That's good.
Oh, glitching. Sorry. I'm frozen. That's why. My internet's locking up. Sorry. But anyway.
But one way or another, this is your website and you got the deep dives. Tell me a little bit more about what you've put into your various deep dives for the listeners to go check out.
So we have like things like nature of creation and science, household tips, preparedness and survival, world government, and I do flash updates and situation updates. We just did the first envisioning. We also have things like the plan to save the world through time travel, all kinds of things like that. So alien, I did one on the Alpha Draco, on the alien agenda and space programs. So yeah, my computers, I did a couple now. We have a couple decodes on edible plants, one on pineapple, it helps your teeth. And we have household tips. There's one decode there on unclogging toilets, some basic stuff. I do construction. I've done building cars. So I'll be doing tips for like tiling or, all kinds of different things for vehicles and different tips along that line. So there you go. And then I do have,
you've got quite a bit on your website. It's genedecode.org. And I highly recommend everybody check it out. Been a great pleasure, Gene. I really appreciate your time and everything. I'm Michael Orwig, and this is the Wizard's Chest.